This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, it's Easter Sunday. I'm just going for a walk now after stuffing myself with some chocolate and watching the first night of WrestleMania, and my partner is cooking a lovely lamb in the oven, so I'll be having that when I come back from this walk, hopefully. So yeah, nice to take the breaks off life and enjoy the 4-day weekend. And also, I was debating yesterday whether to go to the cinema and whether it'd be worth taking a risk on some of these movies, and with money being tight. And I did a double bill in one of those real derelict cinemas that no one goes to, just down the road from me. It actually looks quite impressive from the inside interior, so to speak, before you actually get into the screens. It looks like a proper old cinema. So I had to convince my partner and forewarn her that you'd be going to one of those rundown cinemas, not the nice seats where you can press the button to stretch back that we're used to, that in the normal one we go to, which is this one in Pearly Way that they renovated. You don't even have to pay extra for the chairs. Just every single seat has that recliner. So I had to convince her and make a deal that if you do agree to go to this cinema, you're not allowed to complain. You've agreed to it, but it wasn't as bad anyway. And funny enough, some of the things that are negatives objectively to these old cinemas are kind of nostalgia to me as well. Like the Savoy in Limerick that we went to. I'm sure you used to go to it as well. Not sure if you ever went to a movie there together. That would have been more the one in the Crescent Shopping Centre. I know we've seen a few there, but the Savoy was always a bit derelict, a bit decrepit in terms of things like the seats and whatnot. But the screens themselves and the sound system were pretty good. And it would be always a strange smell and urban legends of a rat that used to attack the regular goers, for sure. So the smell of this cinema didn't put me off. I was thinking, oh yeah, cinemas used to smell like this. It's like, oh yeah, that chairs did have a few little holes in them, so I find a certain charm in that, a nostalgic charm. But anyway, so I went to see Warfare, which was the first movie I went to see, directed by Alex Garland, who done Civil War this year, or was it last year? Probably last year at this point. And I think it's co-directed with a man named Raymond Doza, which I later found out after watching, was a soldier on this mission that really happened. So when I was telling you I was going to watch this movie, you thought, oh really? Another war movie within a year? Give it a break, Alex. And Alex Garland is certainly a writer and director that I'm mixed on. Now I kind of get confused which ones he actually wrote and which ones he directed and which ones Danny Boyle normally did. But I know he's a writer on a lot of Danny Boyle movies as well. And I think he directed Ex Machina, and I think he certainly directed Civil War. And did he do that one with, I can't remember what it's called now, but Annihilation. I think he did that as well. So with him, I often think that he has a great imagination, a great setup, a great ability to really mine a lot of subject matter for entertainment purposes. He often falls off in the final third of his movies. He doesn't really know how to end the movie, but I think that's less the case since he's been a director, because I've liked Ex Machina, haven't really thought much of Annihilation. Maybe it's due a rewatch. And I like Civil War quite a lot, actually. I know you were mixed on it, but I think he just about got away with what he was willing to do. So I was very much on board for giving Warfare a chance. Didn't really know anything about it other than the name, and it's got a cast I like. Will Poulter, who we're both fans of. Joseph Quinn, who I think you like. I'm quite mixed on. He hasn't stood out too much to me, other than the Man of the Month. Cosmo Jarvis is an actor that I really like. I saw him in this Irish movie not so long ago with Barry Keoghan, which the name actually escapes me, but he was brilliant in it and has a very good Irish accent. Then I was looking up who this young guy was, expecting it to be someone O'Shea or someone Mullins. Then I saw Cosmo Jarvis, and I'm thinking, I know Ireland's multicultural, but I don't think that's an Irishman playing that Irishman, and it wasn't. And then I've seen him in one or two other things, always been impressed by him, completely forgot about him, didn't even know he was in this movie until after, when I was looking up this character Elias that I was impressed by, and turns out he plays him as well. So he's got a very good ability to play different characters, and I'll have to get on his filmography more. So when this movie starts, it says the movie is based on the memories of those who served on that mission, and that's quite a statement. We're kind of used of this is based on a true story, this is inspired by a true story, but it's just the title card of this is based on the memories of those who served in this mission sets up something that is very different and very unique as it would unfold. So the movie opens up with all these Marines in 2006 listening or watching that Call on Me song and that video, going wild for those leotard women, as probably lots of people did at the time. And it just shows them boisterous, having fun, just the dynamics of the platoon in a very subtle way. It's nice to see them outside of mission mode, and yeah, it's a nice little scene. It's a crazy scene actually, in a way, because the first thing we see is very bad footage of the video from the Eric Prius, I can't remember for the life of me, but you know what song I'm talking about. And for a minute you're thinking, is this the right footage? But anyway, the movie quickly unfolds to a nighttime scene as they skirt the streets of Iraq and find a way into this house and, I guess, kidnap the family, whatever the army PR justification is. They break into the family's home and hold them there while they carry out the mission, I guess is the more PR savvy way of framing that. And the thing is, it unfolds in a way that whatever you want to take from this movie, you can, which is quite good, which I always enjoy for these war movies, if you can call this a war movie. Certainly a lot of things. It's certainly a lot of things. So we see them commandeering the house, taking the family to the bedroom and setting up camp where they're monitoring this street. It's never really fully explained what they're doing there, I guess. Are they waiting for a target to assassinate? You would presume so, because they've got a sniper rifle based on this town square, and they're taking turns monitoring things. We see the drone position as well, and that's basically the setup. And while this is being set up, oh yeah, it also stars James Gandolfini's son, Michael Gandolfini, who I've been impressed by in stuff like The Deuce. So I'll be keeping an eye on him. He's quite good in this. So we see them setting up, and it's a very slow start, just sitting around the house. We see their interactions between the various characters, and we see their relationships. Just young 20-year-olds, I suppose, doing things that probably immature 20-year-olds would do. Someone asks for the water, one of them backwashes it and gives it to their friend, and he laughs at that. And just nice little touches, which I guess happened since it's based on their memories, that kind of shows you that these are young kids when all is said and done, and when they're not in military mode. And all the while we're getting to know these characters, there's something else going on that will pay off big time in the movie. And that's the sense of personal space is probably how I'd put it. A sense of personal space with these characters, with the framing of their faces, and with the almost claustrophobia that's going on subliminally to us. Because in the opening maybe 20 or 30 minutes of this house, maybe more, we're seeing characters confined to very still places, and we're seeing very still shots of their faces at times, and that basically seeps us in the scene. And the camera works very interestingly in this movie. I don't really know the technical jargon or the technical explanation for it, but it almost is like these people are on stage. And that might feel strange to say, but it's just the way the camera's set up in a way that they feel on stage, and we're the audience, and we're watching this, and it's almost playing out for us. And well, that can appear kind of limiting, and when the enemies do come into this story, we don't get any sense of who they are, nor do we need to really. But what it also does is, when we get to moments later on in this movie, it almost transfers the feeling, it transfers the horror, and it transfers the different personalities and the terror and the real stakes of what's going on in here directly to the audience because of that camera set up and staging. It's almost like there's no filter to the emotion we're getting, and it gets pretty intense, to be honest. And as someone who, I wouldn't say likes war movies, but I like playing computer games. Like, I'm playing Ghost Recon at the moment with my partner and her brother, where we're going around as these type of Marines, and it's quite fun. There's not fun about this movie at a certain point. And the setup of this movie does set it up like we're going to have a little bit of fun here. And I'm not talking about fun in a Jason Statham type of way. More in a way that we're going to find some entertainment in this movie somewhere. And there's different types of war movies. There's war movies that are jingoistic, especially more of the old type of war movies where it's basically used as a propaganda machine for America or a propaganda machine for whatever country that it's showcasing. It's almost used to show, yeah, isn't it great to have a duty? Isn't it great to have a sense of purpose? Isn't it great to fight for your country and what's right? There's that type of setup. And then there's a type of setup that often happens in movies where they want to almost sidestep the politics of war, which is quite extraordinary, where people, maybe we might follow one private or one Marine followed by voiceover. It's a very personal story, and it usually is accompanied by words like, well, we don't quite know what we were fighting for, but we were fighting for each other. Each man became like a brother, and each brother became like a family member. And even though after a while we didn't quite know why we were there, we were bonded by this experience, and we were tied together forever. And that's still, which I found like an honesty in that up until this movie. At a certain point, when I'm watching this genre, I'm thinking, yeah, you probably would be there for your brother. You probably would feel bonded. You very much would feel close to your fellow man in that situation. And that allowed me to almost justify finding heart in movies like this, or maybe movies of this genre, where I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I'm not engaging with the politics either. I'm following this character, and this is a real life experience, and this is a real life account of how people are bonded. And I'm not saying that's not true, because talking to soldiers and talking to various people, that does seem to be very much a genuine experience. I say talking to like I'm going around like a fucking war documentarian. I mean, after listening to people talk about their experiences, I don't doubt that that's genuine. But there's something that this movie taps into that I've really not seen before, in the personal horror of war that's experienced through a platoon. And obviously we've had these situations of movies and war movies where, well, this is pointless. War is pointless. War is pointless. Brings out the worst in man. And I think Band of Brothers, which is an amazing show, probably has all of these elements. It probably has the pointlessness of war, the justification for war, the jingoism of war, the literal band of brothers who are bonded by this. And then it also has horrible situations, like in episode 7 in Band of Brothers, two of the characters, they go into a foxhole and both of their legs get blown off and they're screaming. It's obviously a type of horror of the situation. It's obviously quite affecting, but at the same time, there's a type of I'm someone who thinks that man up can both be a good word and a bad word, but the man up in these war times, you get so far, you still get a sense of, yeah, I lost my leg. That's heroic, but I'm going to say something quippy and that'll be fine. And then that kind of gives the audience relief, and it gives the audience a respite of a break from feeling the emotion and terror of the scene. Or obviously we get a scene where somebody is shot and then they get that blood curdling from their throat and it's like, God damn, it got me, cold, and they're scared. And then we get that dying out scene that usually lasts for like 1 minute or a little while, and then they die, and then that gives us a break from the horror of that. When they're gone, they're gone. You're not dealing with it anymore, and you get on with it. Well, this movie, fucking hell. So back to the part of the movie that I was explaining. They're in a house, and at a certain point they get discovered somehow, and you don't really know how, but the square starts to empty out, people start to leave, and then they get told that people are coming to instigate a jihad on the soldiers. And so they're waiting in the house, and because they're confined to the house, because we've been confined to the house, the sense of claustrophobia and the sense of intensity really starts to ratchet up at this point. And at a certain point they're surrounded, and a grenade is thrown in and injures one of the soldiers a little bit, and they have to call one of these, it's almost like half a tank, half an ambulance, to come and rescue them. And at this point it's still under the type of heroics that you're expecting. He's injured, but he's fine. I'm gonna get on with it. And the commander, by Will Poulter, he's quite dazed as well, and he may be injured, but he's still kind of doing that man up, gotta get on with the mission type thing, which admittedly is very useful in that situation. And there's a scene soon after that where the combat unit that's meant to bring the injured parties, or party at that point, to safety pulls up, and as it's been loaded with soldiers, I think they say it's an IED, could be wrong, but a fucking big missile in layman's terms blows up the IED. And it's at that point that this movie is compulsive viewing and puts itself in a type of war movie that just it should be shown to people before they go off to war. I'll tell you that. We get this massive dust cloud, and we see the rubble, should I say, and we see one soldier played by Joseph Quinn, which you can barely recognize. Took me a few minutes, and he is on fire from his foot, and he's screaming and needing help, and he's in a bad way. And then you have to watch him get rescued, if you want to call it that, and dragged back into the house. And the other soldier, Elliot, played by Jarvis, who you presume is dead, who you hope is dead, because he looks like that, you know, when you have to restoke the fire because there's a burnt log It's all ashy. Like, he's the epitome of that. And at this point, the sound design is absolutely insane. The way their hearing is almost like it's underwater. The sound of the bullets they can barely hear. And obviously, we get that almost genre trope version of that, which is ringing. They often use ringing in other war movies. That tinnitus effect, or whatever it's called. In this, they use so many different audio mixing that you feel like your head is being mashed up in that explosion, and you, as close could be possible without living that experience, seem like you're psychologically bonded to that situation and to that character and all the different characters who are mashed up by that situation. And then there's certain points where the background radio comes back into play and it's so loud and intense, and you're getting disorientated and you're getting confused, and it is at a level of intensity that dog saying hi to me. It's a level of intensity that it's almost too much, and all the while that sound design is happening, you're hearing the continued screams of Joseph Quinn, who I never rated much as an actor, as I said, but the way he nails that scream, which doesn't stop for about 20 minutes, maybe even more, 30 minutes, it just goes on and on and on. That was torturous. It was torturous for him. It was torturous for us. It was torturous for the audience. I only watched it with 4 people, but one of them was my partner, and she said she wanted to leave the cinema but couldn't. And I also felt like I wanted to leave the cinema, and I've never felt that. You just wanted to get away from it. You just wanted to get away from the situation. You just wanted to get away from what you're experiencing. And it wasn't the type of thing where you're watching the, what do they call it, gore porn or body porn, like something in Saw, where, well, some people like this stuff, and if you like it, oh, you're going to enjoy all these horrible things that you witness. And yeah, it's not, how shall I put it, it's not there for the sake of it either, in a disgusting kind of way, where we're just going to show you what this is, and we're going to really push your buttons to make you feel a certain way, just to provoke. I think it's just, they've nailed the experience of this situation, and that's a central feature of the movie. But at the same time, the mission is so tense, the stakes are so tense, you want these characters to be all right, that it also works as a piece of film in its own right, not just watching people suffer, which is often something that I don't really need to experience in movies just for the sake of it. It has other feathers to its cap as well. And yeah, it is absolutely relentless in its depiction of this. And not only that, and this is the thing where I was saying beforehand, we're not used to this in war movies. We're used to that person dying. We're used to that person getting rescued so he's away from the scene and now we can get back to the action. No, this is the action. This is the band of brothers. This, what it is PTSD in action. I felt like I was in some kind of form of PTSD in real time. And it did something that monologues and voiceovers don't accomplish, or at least try to accomplish, and could never do it as well as this. You're thinking, what is the point of this? What is the point of war? What is the point of being in this situation? What is the point of this? This is fucked up. Yeah, they're going to be bonded. course they're bonded by these experiences. They're going to be trauma bonded. And then the movie takes another step. It ratchets it up. The character by Elliot, which you think is dead, jumps up out of his dismembered body, and now he's screaming as well. So you have two people screaming. So now it's times two. So you have to deal with this. And then you have the morphine scene. Morphine ain't really helping these guys. They don't really feel the morphine. You don't feel the relief. And then then the movie dials that down a little bit, although it's still there. And at a certain point you realize the traditional stars that you gravitate to are now missing from this movie. These anchors that you normally get in these war movies. These are my guys. I can look to them for the heroics. I can look to them for the acting. Cosmo Jarvis is screaming. Joseph Quinn is screaming. They're basically incapacitated. Will Poulter can't handle it. And then these other Marines take over the scene, and they're not really recognizable actors, at least to me. And then at a certain point, there's no leads to anchor this movie to. Although the guy that comes in, I don't know his name. Maybe I think he's mixed race anyway. I thought he was quite good. But it just becomes something different beyond that point. It becomes not a movie in a way. And you're just on tenterhooks like you're watching this mission unfold. And it's as intense as something like Mad Max Fury Road, but without the fun. But you are still having the tenseness of hoping that everything works out and hoping they get away. And then eventually they do get rescued and they get away in the tanks. And then we're left with that family beforehand, just left there wondering, why the fuck was I involved in this? The street is absolutely messed up from the fighting and the bombing, and we get these great sequences of these jets flying down really low. They call it a show of force. That's an amazing scene. And we're just left with the fighters, the terrorists, whatever you want to call them, just there in the streets with no one to fight now. And that's basically the end of the movie. And it was so affecting that I postponed playing Tom Clancy Ghost Recon that night. I was thinking, there ain't nothing fun about this. I don't want to role play this anymore. And I went to see Sinners after that, and they had an army recruitment ad, which was the standard make something of yourself and turn it around and be someone. And it was just absolutely sickening that you see the strings of that type of recruitment after seeing a movie like Warfare. They should show them fucking Warfare. There'd be no one in the army. But yeah, I hope you get to it. I don't know when you will, but yeah, interesting to hear your thoughts.
Hey man, yeah, you'd mentioned that you'd watched it in a double bill with Sinners, but it's funny hearing now that it was like the actual true double bill was Warfare and then a military advert. That's got to be one of the most fucked up double bills that anyone's ever seen in the cinema. Yeah, I had hoped to see this in the cinema. I think you sent that voice note through about 7-8 weeks ago, and you kind of recommended in the sense of like, I think you maybe just alluded to the fact that you'd liked it, because we always try and like keep it under our hat if we like a movie or not. But another friend of mine was like, this is a brilliant movie. I didn't enjoy it whatsoever, but it's a brilliant movie. But you'd have to go see it in the cinema. It's like a complete cinema experience. And I had wanted to. Life got in the way. By the time I actually was in a position to head to the cinema, it had already left. It's not the biggest movie, you know, there's, you know, I guess there's a lot happening on screen, but it's also fairly contained. You can imagine that it would have been not the biggest budget movie around. It's not like a summer tentpole movie or something like that. So I think it was only in the cinema for a relatively short amount of time. And unfortunately, I missed the boat. So I think you going to see this in the cinema and then me watching this film on TV, we've just seen different films. So it's good to like just sort of establish that from the get-go that, you know, we haven't watched the same movie. I think all movies are different from the big to the small screen, but I think some movies are really night and day, and this is one of them. So both from a visual, like the kind of like it's, you're locked into the movie in this dark room, but also the sounds. I mean, the sound will be a huge part of this experience, and you know, nothing can compete with cinema sound. So yeah, I guess the other thing I had is I had my friend telling me that it was a really intense experience, and that will also decrease how intense it is for me then, because it's like I'm going in with those expectations. I think if you're going in just sort of having, oh yeah, he made a, what was it called, Civil War last year, and maybe it'd be more the same, and then you get this, it's a real, must have been an incredibly intense experience. And that's a great thing about movies, is like sometimes whether you like a movie, hate a movie, when you get a real palpable experience from something, whether it's like an adrenaline pumping experience or a really gut-wrenchingly emotional experience, or like, you know, side-splittingly funny, where you got like, wow, for an hour and a half or 2 hours, I was in the fucking zone of that movie. That is, you know, one of my favorite things about cinema, and this film I can imagine really delivering in the cinema. I enjoyed it, or you know, enjoyed is a bit of a weird word, but I appreciated it. I'm definitely more miss than hit on Garland. You mentioned that you kind of can take him or leave him sometimes, but sounds like you like him a hell of a lot more than me. If you really enjoyed Civil War and would contemplate rewatching Annihilation, I think for me, he's amazing at concepts. His ideas are brilliant. He's terrible at plots. The actual story, how it progresses, and you know, his third act issues, I think it's almost like he should be like, he should come up with an idea and then someone else should write the movie. But you know, he's prolific. He's done a lot of work, some of it adapting other people's work, like Never Let Me Go and this movie Warfare are adaptations. And I think, you know, that's there you get to see what, like, his strengths combining with maybe someone who's or some source material that is a bit stronger than what he would naturally be inclined to do with it. But also, I will say Ex Machina, which I believe is just like his vision start to finish. That's a movie I like all the way up to the end. I do think it's the end is probably the worst part of the movie, but it's still good. The rest of the movie is so good that it's like the worst part of the movie is still good. Anyway, last film I watched by him was Civil War, which came out last year, I believe. So we're talking 2 movies in the space of a few months that both have war in the title. And Civil War, I didn't like. I generally didn't like it. I didn't hate it though. I thought it was just fine. I thought it was like, oh, it was pointless to watch, and it keeps on collapsing on this weird decision to have like try and avoid politics that much in a movie that's about an American Civil War, and like never mention why they're fighting, never mention anything to do with the like the actual conflict, like what's the underpinnings of it, but it's a movie about war journalism, and I feel like they were bending over backwards to do that. A lot of scenes were just felt a bit kind of a self-contained short that didn't really, like the Jesse Plemons scene and stuff. It's just like, well, that doesn't really add to the movie. It's just its own self-contained little thing for me, and the ending was god awful. But the best thing about the movie for me was the way it depicted the immediacy of combat. Scenes where they're like, there's incoming fire and they have to like get around this corner, but how are they going to get around that corner, and the exact pacing of that, the way you hold your body, and managing threat within a very contained environment. Like, it's more dangerous standing over here than it is over there. Like, all that stuff was really, really strong. And I've just learned from Wikipedia that Ray Mendoza, who's the originator of this film, Warfare, he was the military advisor or something like that on Civil War. I presume that's where he met Garland. And this film, Warfare, is based on a book that he wrote about his experience in this. I don't know if it's specifically about this incident or if that's just like a chapter in the book and it's about his whole tour of Iraq. I'm not sure, but it's interesting that Garland like took that relationship, that like director and military advisor, which to me led to the best stuff in Civil War, and then like built upon that and has now sort of co-directed a film where the entire film is just that, like the actual moment to moment. I think from the point where it's daytime and we see Cosmo Jarvis in like at the sniper rifle, from that moment on, it's more or less in real time, which is one of my favorite things in movies. I love movies that are either entirely or a large section of it are in real time, because you can get into these little moments, that the rhythm that we're all familiar with of how actual life works rather than film life. Like, there are gaps. Something dramatic happens after a lengthy period of not much happening, but it all kind of gets you so much more immersed in the experience. And this film reminded me a little bit of the second half of Full Metal Jacket, in that it's like, we're really going to take our time to give you the space here and the like it's a real thing. This is not an action movie. As you said, it doesn't glamorize war. It's not like, there's no slow motion shot with classical music. Like, thanks be to God, there is not any classical music in the whole film. It doesn't depict these soldiers as heroes or villains. You quite rightly said that you can kind of bring your own lens to the table. Like, I'd be looking at this going, they shouldn't be there in the first place. American, foreign policy installed Saddam Hussein in this country. And then when that wasn't working out anymore for them, went in to take him down so they could make sure that they secured the oil. And the way the US military, even like, not to necessarily put this at the feet of the actual soldiers that are there in this movie, but the way they come in, it's like they'll be happy for this family's house and lives to be destroyed, seemingly would, don't have any concern for the Iraqi people. The translator the two translators that are with them, that are kind of ostensibly part of their unit, like, they send them out on their own first, so that in case there's people that are going to shoot, so that they'll get shot, and there's like, we see this general thing of like, from the movie's perspective, these are like our protagonists, and the people who we can't see, who are in the shadows and are kind of faceless and shooting in at us, are like the villains, in a sense, of this film. But certainly equally possible to look at this film as like, let's make a movie from the perspective of the villains, the invaders who are coming in, and like, you know, before they arrive, it's a functioning town, and when they leave, the, you know, people of that town are going to have to like pick up the pieces. But it's so rare to see a film that's not sugarcoating, that's an American military film that isn't sugarcoating them, but also isn't making them like over the top villains. You know, like we've seen stuff in Platoon where like they'll do massacres and it'll be like really like this look how fucked up they become. This is just like, no, this is like standard. I mean, it's not Another Day at the Office because obviously it's a very specific situation that we see here, but I thought it's one of the most balanced and realistic looks at how a moment like this, a piece of conflict, would actually play out. Obviously, it's based on a book by one of the people involved. It starts with a title card of "This film is entirely based on the memories of the soldiers," or something like that, which I thought was a bit of a weird thing. I mean, it's like, isn't every film that's claiming to be a true story adaptation of an event entirely based on the, like, I guess what they're trying to say is other films are claiming to be true stories. This is actually how it went down. But, or I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not the intention, but it's a weird specific way of wording what this is. But then when you actually watch the film, it does sort of hold water because it feels very, very genuine. And I thought all of the actors were fantastic. I wasn't actually familiar with Cosmo Jarvis. I mean, looking at him now, he doesn't look anything like he does in the movie. I might have seen him in something, but he was brilliant in it. I love Will Poulter and I love Joseph Quinn, as you said. I love him based on one role. I think I've only seen him in one thing, which is Stranger Things season 4 or something. One, like the most recent season, I think, of Stranger Things, he was in. And like from literally, I don't know, like a minute of him being on screen, I was like, oh, we found our next, like, this guy's got the X factor. He can be a movie star. He's amazing. And then this is only the second time I've seen him. He's good in this movie, but there are people who I think shone a little brighter, but not to blame Joseph Quinn. I just think like he did what he needed to. He did what was required of him for this part. But yeah, Cosmo Jarvis was electric. The guy who's actually playing Ray Mendoza, who's a Native American actor, DeFaro Wunatai, I believe is his name. He was brilliant. Gandolfini was decent, yeah. I never in a million years would have guessed that he was James Gandolfini's son. But yeah, it was a good cast. I think this film would struggle with lesser actors in a way. The actor that you said was kind of not a star, but I think he is kind of one of the most Hollywood guys in the movie, is Charles Melton. He's the sort of Filipino looking guy who's like the head of the other unit, who when he comes in, he essentially has to become the head of the whole operation because Will Poulter's kind of, he's no longer able to command. He, for me, maybe it's because he looks so Hollywood, I don't know, but he for me was a step down in acting quality from the rest of the people. Not bad. I didn't think he was bad. I thought he was more doing the performance that you would get had this movie been like your Michael Bay version or your just, more standard Hollywood version of this story. He was acting on that wavelength, whereas the other ones felt more like they were doing that more method acty like this is actually how people react naturalistically to a situation. So, but yeah, it's a very intense movie. The sort of body horror element is quite arresting, quite shocking. I sometimes found it a bit, and again, this is something that wouldn't be crossing your mind in the cinema when you're just completely arrested by the movie. But when you're watching on a small screen and it's that less high impact, I was watching it, I was like, okay, so this is an exercise in showing me what this would really be like. And it's doing pretty well at that. I don't think Alex Garland is an amazing director. I don't think he's one of, like, if we just to take away him as a screenwriter whatsoever, and we just look at him as a director, I don't think he's one of the best directors of all time, or probably even of now. I think this is his best work as a director, if we're just speaking exclusively from a directing standpoint. But I didn't think this was like a 10 out of 10 in terms of like the task at hand, which is like, let's capture the reality of this experience as much as possible and deliver the best film out of that. And again, small screen versus big screen, fully accept that there's something missing from me in this experience. And it's also like, as I said, I really love real-time stuff. I was hoping it was going to be a sniper movie early in the movie, because sniper stuff is like weirdly one of my favorite genres. There's not that many sniper movies, and this isn't one of them. But one thing I love about sniper stuff is it's just the massive expanses of time when nothing is happening. It's the anticipation and it's the staging and that stuff when he is actually looking through the scope, and you've got people walking around like having a drink of water, going for a piss, like just like all of the jargon. I love all the jargon in this, and the radioing it, and the kind of communication breakdowns, and then communication succeeding and being very efficient and stuff like that. Like all that stuff is what I like the most about this film. And when it goes into like chaos and mayhem, I think it's really good. But I guess it isn't that enjoyable. It's not supposed to be. It's almost like movies aren't like, movies can be great and unenjoyable. Gaspar Noé, Lars von Trier, people who are like trying to make you have a bad time, but do that. But like, there's a point to it, and that's in the service of great cinema. So I'm not going to like dock it points because I wasn't like, really happy the whole way through it. But I kind of came away feeling like, it's a good movie, but I felt, I don't know, something, I felt like there's a better version of this. It's not there's a better version that's been made, but the film could almost have gone further into the, like, and I think, again, this comes down to Alex Garland as a director. I think great directors can sell you even more on the experience. I don't know how to put it, but it's like, because obviously I get that this film is absolutely packed full of detail and interaction and stuff like that, but some of it felt a little superficial. Like, for example, the family that's there, or most of the characters, to be honest, like, it's well done, but it's somehow not as affecting as it could be, other than adrenaline and other than like the kind of cacophony of it all. I don't know. I don't know quite how to put it, but when early in the movie, I was like, okay, this is what the movie's going to do. And then it did that for, an hour or 90 minutes or whatever, but it never, like, I guess great movies, they get you, they sort of set the expectations of like, this is what this film is, and then they can transcend that, they can elevate that. And this for me just sort of went, it early in the movie, it laid out its mission statement and then did that well, which is why I think it's a good movie that I like quite a bit. But I guess maybe because I've seen glowing praise for it, like, you know, like people sort of like, you know, it's a masterpiece, it's 5 stars, it's incredible, all that kind of stuff. That it's missing something that I can't necessarily say what that would be, because I'm not a great director. I can't go, oh, well, they should have done this, and that would have been the secret sauce. But ultimately, for me, it felt like a very good technical exercise, but missing some element that makes it more of a great movie, which I know is sort of saying nothing, but, you know, all I can do is sort of like report my experience with the film. But yeah, good movie. It certainly makes me think higher of Alex Garland as a director, even though he didn't come up with this idea as such. Like, he came up with the filmmaking idea, but he didn't come up with the source material. It's not like, you know, Ex Machina, where it's like a original idea from his head, but like the concept of this film of like, let's pick a military event that happened in the war. Many events like this happened. This isn't like every member of the company was killed. I mean, I don't think any of them were killed. It didn't last for like 2 weeks. It lasted for maybe an hour or something. It was, you know, an incredibly dramatic event, but it wasn't so dramatic that this is like one of the more famous stories of the war kind of thing. So pick a quite a contained event that we can maybe do enough research and do enough, like, look into it in enough detail that we can like actually properly capture the whole thing and make the audience members see like every little detail of like what people were saying, who was leaning against what wall, who was in this room, who's in that room, and then capture that on screen. Again, from just, even though it's not sci-fi, from an Alex Garland perspective, great concept, amazing concept. And I think maybe it's because of Ray Mendoza's influence, because clearly he was involved in Civil War and stuff. Like the showing of it and the like the moment to moment choreography and jargon and costuming and props and attention to detail and stuff is like really, really strong. And so you get a better experience. And also because Garland doesn't have to come up with some like weird twist everything that's head, like high level gotcha Black Mirror ending. You again get like a lot of the Garland issues solved. But there is, yeah, it was, that's a lot to achieve in a film, and that's really good. But like, I guess I kind of, at a certain point, fairly early in the movie, I'm kind of like, okay, this is what I'm going to be watching, and then that is what I end up watching, and nothing more. So, yeah, like the flick. I don't know how much you'll remember it, but because you've watched it almost 2 months ago at this point. But yeah, I'm glad to have finally caught up with it.
Hey man, good to hear your thoughts on Warfare. I'm almost tempted to watch the movie at home just to see your experience, because as you rightly said, it's quite different experience, and this movie, more than most, with the sound design and the intensity of the cinema and the relentlessness of the cinema in a dark room, don't really have very much to add to what you said. So just here to say that I've listen to your voice note and good to hear your thoughts. There's one point that you do bring up though that I'm almost fascinated by. It's the feeling that this movie is missing something to take it to the next level that you can't quite articulate. I wonder would you have felt that way in the cinema on the one hand, and on the other hand, I kind of know exactly what you mean. And because a movie isn't a great movie, it doesn't take away from it being a good movie. But it is an example of the elite talent of maybe somebody like Paul Greengrass that would just have these little touches and these little moments on top of this that would just take it to the next level. I mean, Greengrass doesn't always do it, but if you take something like Captain Phillips or Bloody Sunday and whatnot, there's just something extra in a filmmaker like him that somebody who cut their claw in screenwriting like Alex Garland, that there's a level of visualness that comes from a pure director, I think. But yeah, good movie in the sense that wasn't necessarily fun to watch, but very much appreciate that it exists.
Yeah, interesting questions. Obviously, I can't speak to how different the experience would have been had I watched it in the cinema, because I didn't see it in the cinema, and it's a film that would be intensified so much by the cinema that I'm obviously not in a position to say, even if I'd seen it in the cinema, I still don't think I would consider it a great movie. I know that watching it on the small screen, which, as I said, I've watched a different film than you've watched, but for me, watching it on the small screen, it kind of ended, and I was like, okay, moving on with my day. Like, that's over. Like, it wasn't like the film is just like in my bones for days or weeks. That kind of extra level of great film that just completely blows you away in terms of what's possible. This one felt a bit more like, if you take some of these really intense sequences, like the opening of Saving Private Ryan, and you kind of make that the whole film, and you reference plays a lot in your initial voice note. I didn't feel like the film was like a play at all, but it is very much like observing a full space, like an actual literal contained space, and how people walk back and forth around it and move over here and sit down here, and like extrapolating that out to a whole feature-length film is a brilliant experiment, and I think it works really well. I think they've made a really good film. But I think, even though I'm not able to put my finger on what it is that had this film for me fall short of like a great film that I'm kind of going to remember, like, or that I'm going to be kind of reverential of forever, I think the closest I've come to understanding that is you mentioning Paul Greengrass there and the likes of Captain Phillips. And I don't mean to say that Captain Phillips and Warfare are like a one-for-one comparison. They don't have the same goals exactly. They're not the same movie. So it's not like I'm pointing at Captain Phillips and going, see, this is how you do Warfare right. But Greengrass's ability, like, let's say he had made this movie, if the script had been identical, I'm not sure if this was a fully scripted movie or if there was some improv or something. It felt very scripted to me, but let's say the script was identical and you hand this to Greengrass. I feel like, and again, I can't really articulate this. I can't really explain. I can't show my work, so to speak. But I feel like in his directorial hands, this could have got to like a higher level. This film, Warfare, is by Garland standards, incredibly well directed, but it's almost like the halfway point between television and the green grass bombast cinema experience. And like, this shouldn't be a Michael Bay movie. It's every way in which it's grounded and doesn't feel overplayed for cinema is a strength of this film, but you can kind of have your cake and eat it if you're like a truly incredible director, I think. So yeah, but yep, like I said, like I keep coming back to, good movie. What's Greengrass up to actually? Did he do that News of the World movie, or did he not? I feel like it's been a while since I've seen something from him. But yeah, I think it's a nice, hopefully a nice indicator of Greengrass sort of leveling up his directing skill. It's amazing that he made, I know you both of the films worked for you, but for me, to make 2 war films in a few months, one of them leave me cold, and then to turn it around and make this, which really impressed me, is a real surprise.
Yeah, so to answer your question about Greengrass, he did do that News of the World with, well, if that is that what it's called? He did do that News of the World with Tom Hanks, and I can't remember who else was in that. But I've just seen a movie, and I don't know much about it, that has just come into my view there the other day, and I've added it to my watch list. And that is, he's got a movie coming to Apple TV, which is starring Matthew McConaughey, and it's called The Last Bus or The Lost Bus. I don't know what it's about exactly, and I've tried to stay away from it. But yeah, I saw like a few seconds of the trailer before I knew what it was, and that looks like something that could be interesting. I'm always worried though when filmmakers go to streaming services. I feel like it botches their work quite a lot. I don't know if it's because I'm not. Maybe it's because they know it's not being released in the cinema, but there's definitely a distinct difference a lot of the times. I can't think of many movies that came out on the streaming services that felt cinematic, really. So we'll wait and see.
Right. Okay. Interesting that he did that News of the World. I had it in the back of my head he did, but the film is very un-Greengrass-like. It's not, I didn't like it at all, really. And I think it's an example of a director who does something incredibly well, completely deviating from that thing and working, and just a complete mismatch between director and film. And I agree that there's that weird thing. It's hard to put your finger on, like a lot of what I've been trying to grasp in this conversation, but it's hard to put your finger on it. But there's something about streaming movies that just, not always, but very often just don't deliver the magic that we fell in love with in terms of like the cinema experience or just the film experience, because, you know, for every 100 films we watched growing up, a good 98 of them would have been films that were distributed in the cinema as opposed to like TV movies or something. So that, what we associate with the good times of watching a movie, that seems to have got lost in the streaming shuffle to a large extent. I find I get that rarely. And, you know, I can definitely say that Warfare doesn't feel like a streaming film. Like it feels like a film that is not just completely eroded by streamer notes, Netflix or Apple or Amazon notes, and is actually trying to deliver like a potent film experience. So, you know, it has that going for it for sure.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.